Amazon Game Studios put forth a bold vision for a PvP Sandbox MMO, and then one day, out of nowhere, they blew it all up. Well, to be fair, it wasn't completely out of nowhere, and they didn't blow it up entirely, but they most certainly, how shall I put this politely, they certainly changed course from what we saw in alpha, in their advertisements, in the promotion, going back 3 years, and what we see now. Now, all of us have been thinking about, talking about these revelations, these changes that have been quote-unquote explained in the dev blog, in the PvP blog video, dev diary video. It's a bit difficult to wrap your head around it and to understand exactly why they've done what they've done, but I just have a few things I want to say on the subject, so let me get into that. First of all, I will say, from a position of some experience and knowledge, that game development is hard. It's not an easy thing. We don't give developers enough credit, and we gloss over all kinds of difficulties that they have to face, both in development and in dealing with their potential customers, the client base, the player base, the fan base, aka us. It's difficult just from a technical standpoint, and then you have to deal with satisfying often what are opposing groups, and that's certainly the case when you're talking about the PvP player bases. It's not easy. I get it. That said, you know, you have a situation in this case of a large, well-funded, well-resourced, well-backed studio with considerable technical capabilities that sets forth a very clear vision to address a lack in the genre that all of us who are fans of hardcore PvP MMOs have identified, and then for whatever reason they decide that this vision is impossible to realize, and they completely blow it up. And when I say completely, I mean completely. You know, you have a situation where a small group of people have a negative experience, and you entirely abandon an established course. It's honestly, it's astounding. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in my many years, and I'm amazed that anyone would expect anybody paying money in this day and age for a product and a service, which is what an MMO would be, to have faith in any organization that would completely reverse direction so quickly and based on such flimsy foundation. I mean, I really don't know what they expect. In any case, that said, what's done is done. This is what we have. So we are going to have to make the most of it. And for some people, you know, who have pre-ordered, they've already refunded. Even those who haven't, like myself, don't feel that this game is going to satisfy their needs, and I get it. So let's go back to the beginning and see what we can do here. Now, I remember when Alpha first started, being shocked by the aesthetics of the game, how good it was, not only in the kind of superficial elements, the UI, the UX, the sound design, and I apologize for calling those superficial, but just the game world itself, the graphics obviously, and the overall aesthetic of the experience. It was astoundingly good. Astoundingly good considering it was an alpha. I mean, I've played a lot of games over a lot of years, and I have never had an experience where, the game world itself was significant content. I mean, bereft of any kind of structured PvE, and even outside of the PvP activities, just being in the world, looking at the world, running through the world, the sounds, the sights, the experience of that itself was amazing. It really was a new world. you know, you could have seen all kinds of ways to take advantage of this foundation. And again, you know, it's just the feeling of shock that this is what we're left with is pretty incredible and hard to accept. In any case, the direction that we've kind of seen that they're going in now, as all of us know who are following this, is an abandonment of the so-called hardcore PvP model. You know, the advertising for the game from the very beginning mentioned a phrase, you know, murderous bandits. That was cleaned up towards the end of alpha, and that should have been, it was a sign of a stepping back for some of us, and I don't know if we expected it to go quite this far, but in any case, this is the world that was presented, a world where, you know, you were at risk not only from the environment, from other players, and that was part of the game, that was part of the content. You know, the famous quotes about the spine of the game now, which are meme-worthy, have been you know, shared widely, so we all are familiar with what things should have been, and that's been changed. Now, what they've left us with is very similar to many theme parkish MMOs that we see now. That I mean, you can go back as far as Guild Wars 2, World versus World. You know, the 3-faction, instanced, bottled PvP experience. And in some ways, you know, amazingly, that's even better than what we're going to get, because World versus World was opt-in in a way that once you were in that instance, once you were in that situation, you could be killed. You know, there was no safe place to go outside of the starting area. And what it seems we're going to get in New World is something entirely different, where you can opt in and literally run up to a PvP players owned, you know, what you want to call it, village, town, whatever, and harvest outside their walls and cannot be killed. I mean, this is one of the things that was incredible about New World's vision in the beginning, where they had banking which was not shared. So if you wanted to transport valuable resources for crafting and gearing your company from one part of the world to the other, you had to move that through the world and face all the risks that entailed. You literally had to caravan with protection, you know, these things from an outpost to your company's holding, and in some cases that could be very far away, and that experience alone was content. That experience alone was a huge part of the territorial conquest dynamic. I mean, sure, you could take something in some part of the map, but could you hold it? Could you control it? Could you exercise control over the surrounding regions, territory, including the resource nodes? I mean, that was a part of the game, and that's all gone. You know, I think some people are overlooking the ramifications of this opt-in system. It isn't simply a question of, you know, PvP or PvE. It changes the entire structure of the game. You know, in regards to things such as transportation of materials across the land, in terms of protecting resources. You know, in a territorial conquest game, you have to deal with all kinds of elements that are not something you would see elsewhere, such as scouting. You know, just the mere presence of an enemy player or a player in your area is a risk. You have to maintain control of your region. You have to you know, do all kinds of things, kill the players, kill tents, etc., etc. You can't simply rely on winning the battle in the 50v50 instant siege. It's just astounding that we have this vision now of such a reduced form of what was originally put forth, and it's simply not going to work. I mean, nobody who has any experience with these types of games sees that this incomplete hodgepodge of a set of mechanics can be successful. You're not going to please either group, and what you're going to be left with is something that will be new and certainly aesthetically pleasing, and perhaps even be a good game. But it's not going to be unique, it's not going to be bold, it's not going to be something that hasn't been done before, and it's not going to have any kind of longevity or success. And that's a shame, because the game's foundation, from its visuals to its original vision, was impressive. And we all had high hopes for this. I backed before the announcement that was made, and I'm talking not about the recent announcement about the PvP changes, but the announcement at the Game Awards, and I had a bad feeling based on what we learned thereafter, and what we've seen since has been disappointing, to say the least. And there are a lot of people who say that the hardcore PvP player base is niche, it's small, the model can't work. There's not enough players to support it, and I strongly disagree. You can look at specific examples in MMOs. Eve is the biggest one, I suppose, the most successful. Granted, it is not a first-person MMO open-world game, but the mechanics are what is important. The player base's existence is what is important, and the fact that you can satisfy, to a degree, everybody, if you do it correctly, if you have the right mechanics. The New World was, it had a lot of things going for it, in the sense that initially we had this player concurrency number of 10,000 per server, which they've stepped back by an order of magnitude to 1,000, which is another bad sign. So you're talking about a set of variables. You have this company with all these resources, with the server technology. You could easily have done multiple servers. So one possible quote-unquote solution to the problem would have been to have PvP and PvE servers, which has been done in the past for other games and does work. They decided against that. I'm not entirely sure why. It may have to do with the fact that some of the mechanics have been changed at the core level in terms of looting and so on, and it would have been difficult to maintain different role sets if it affected the core code for the two server types. Perhaps, I don't know. There are other ways to do it. Again, one of the great things about New World was it's a world. It is huge, and even the parts that we had access to in alpha were significantly large. It is very much the case that you could have had a geographic model in terms of your PvP and PvE zones. The outposts, the mechanics of alpha are pretty well understood. The outposts themselves were non-PvP zones. There were safe areas in the game, multiple safe areas, in fact. This was an established mechanic. It could very easily have been tweaked to achieve something which was much closer to the original vision and still addressed the gravest concerns that were had by both those who felt they were being griefed and by the developers who clearly thought that things had to change. I don't see why these options were not explored. Now, I say that without full knowledge of the testing that's been done. We do know that apart from the alpha that many of us participated in, they did perform all kinds of other tests with invited groups, not just internal testing, but gaming groups and guilds and so on that were given a closed environment to test in. Perhaps some of these changes have been based not just on the alpha data, but on those experiences in the interim as well. We don't really know. There's a lack of information in many respects about all of this, really, and that's making this difficult to assess. But I find it extremely hard to believe that, given all of the possible permutations of rule set and of mechanics, that a group as large as AGS could not find a way to make this work. If that is true, and given that we know that their original vision was for this sandbox open world PvP MMO, that was their vision, and if for some reason they at one time believed it were possible and now completely have an opposing opinion, that's just unbelievably shocking. I find that amazing. In any case, this is what we've got. This is what we're going to have to work with. We either, I said earlier that, refunding the pre-orders has been done by many people. I haven't done that yet. I'm hoping that following direct experience with the beta and with what they've actually put together here, we'll be able to provide constructive feedback and maybe guide things back on track. I doubt that based on my experience in alpha, but we will see. That's one option. Just not playing the game at all is another. I know a lot of people. That's the thing. This was the game that we were looking to satisfy this need. There are not a lot of titles out there who provide this experience. There are some. There are some that do it in different ways, but this was the thing that this was the hope that this game would do it. And I can't say that I'm hopeful that somehow this could be turned around, but gonna try. Being someone who believes that it can be done, I would like at least to see them try, and hopefully we can collectively put pressure on them and make them realize that there is a market for this type of content. There are ways to do it, and maybe they will see that and return somewhat to their original vision, which was blown up, as I like to say. It's ironic, but that's where we are. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. I hope that we have some good news soon and following the weekend, and they've had a chance to digest the reaction to this set of disappointments that we're all facing, and maybe New World will do more than cover old ground. Let's hope. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.